more than likely, the entire nation will realize the Supreme Court's the reason why this fat bitch came back to the presidency, in all honesty. And at some
True. Big true twice. Criminal immunity, axing the 14th Amendment. Ooh. Hutch calls out DGG for not being libbed out enough. Okay, Mr. Ultra Wide.
So like DGG is supposed to be like big old libs, right? You know, like big old fucking libs. I thought we were like the tankies, these fucking LARPy motherfuckers. The tankies. And then someone sends me a link to some of these Reddit threads.
Uh-oh.
And apparently we're not doing the tankies. Apparently we're gonna do the tanky. We're gonna do the tankies. We're gonna be the tankies. I guess that's the new thing that we're gonna do now. We're just gonna like unironically become tankies.
Uh-oh.
Maybe I guess the tankies were right all along. Is that what's going on? What the fuck is happening out there, guys? Jesus.
Posts he is referencing. Rashad is regarded here and made the same mistake Peace and Josiah make whenever they have these debates. Stop accepting and playing in Hutch's framework. Obviously, if there are sympathetic elements within the system, and you have both the proof and evidence to fight the case, you should appeal verdicts you think are corrupt or maligned with the reality of law. If the Supreme Court behaves in a way that is tangibly bad faith or otherwise antithesis to a healthy democracy, then you should use all available legal avenues to rectify the situation. Rashad's problem is he's getting stun-locked by Hutch, calling him pro-dictatorship, and totally missing that he's essentially forcing himself to argue from the position that we ought to ignore all legal possibilities. At least from this clip, it just makes Hutch look more sane than him. 10 minutes. Oh, perfect for my emails. Yes!
When he talks to you
I
about
would ask him this.
Right, what was this comment? Rashad doesn't know the full details of the Dominion case. I'm guessing that's why Hutch was asking what laws were broken. One thing Stephen said is that the right never discusses that Donald Trump needs to do better with messaging because Sean Hannity is the one who does the messaging, who's doing the messaging. Rashad said he wants Schumer and Jeffries gone. I think where he's mistaken is that Schumer and Jeffries are very good at the job of being a politician. That they're just not good at communicating it. And the only way around that, or the solution would be for the media to do the messaging for them. I think they were talking past each other a bit. Fact is, Fox News settled with Dominion because they thought they'd lose the court case against them, meaning they'd be found guilty in a civil court of knowingly lying about whether America had a free and fair election in 2020. Surely there should be legal consequences for their actions, ? I think you can make a liberal argument for that. It's 3 different posts, by the way. The poster is retarded. Is this guy retarded? I didn't see anything super retarded. I don't know. Let's listen to the clip. All right.
When he talks to you,
I would ask him the same question.
Josiah's a great guy, though.
I would ask him the same question. You witness us go back and forth on these issues about like preserving liberal norms and
yeah.
So you know I'm consistent.
Well, I'm just saying you're being a little. No, I'm supporting Soypill, who's my boy.
This is the exact post he got mad about. Hutch still doesn't get modern politics or elections. Oh. So I know I've been posting constantly about Hutch, but listening to him on Lib Learn just keeps fucking triggering me because he seems to be unable to get some basic points like the bigger picture, especially on the day with Rashad Crenshaw. Okay, let's listen to this. 0.5 out of 2 should be the first one, right? Had to split the first part into 2 parts, rip link to the rest. Okay, Jesus.
So what bases do conservatives usually have to cover in order to win? They usually have to cover race, gender, cultural issues in order to win because they can't win on policy. So we have to take into account how do they usually win elections, and we have to shut off all of those avenues as best we can. Because the reality is that they don't need policy to win, but we do. Not even because honestly, we come to the game with policy and sometimes we lose. We lose. And we're not losing because the opposite side comes to the table with good ideas. Sometimes they get lucky, like you said. Sometimes unforeseen things happen. October 7th, the war in Ukraine, and Biden's a weak leader and he's asleep at the wheel. These things can happen. But what I like about conservatives is that excluding Trump's demonic, absolute satanic behavior, they're kind of ready for anything. They have their narrative, they have their message, they have their idea, and there are normies who think Kamala is an evil person because of her laugh. If you're underestimating that ability, that level of like influence mentally on the public, we're going to be, like you said, well, I don't know if it was IRI or you, but like this kind of like eternal back and forth with the right. And frankly, I don't think America can survive a back and forth with the right. I don't. Not forever. There's going to have to be an implosion at some point nationally. You can't possibly believe this kind of cultural back and forth, because that's really what it is going to last. Yeah, but like how long is that going to... Yeah, we had a civil war.
For the majority of the time it existed.
Exactly.
We have flourished up until this point. And we're also like forgetting the fact that, again, immigration is being used. Race is being used. We're forgetting the fact that there are demographic issues right now in America that are incensing a lot of voters to say this is the final showdown. We don't want democracy. We want dictator, Lord and Savior Donald. And if you don't like it, shut
No, but that's what you sound like. You want a different dictator that's going to
I never said I wanted dictatorship. I
Yeah,
never
you
said
said-
that.
hang
No,
on,
I didn't. What I said was what I want is a strong Democratic Party that looks to completely overhaul American culture, not by forcing people to do things, but by heavily investing in education, going after institutions that seek to spread misinformation once this regime is toppled, going after companies that spread misinformation. I don't know, like maybe Fox.
Hang on,
maybe
that is a dictatorship, bro.
Hold on,
Hang on.
maybe.
What you just described as a dictatorship.
Hold on.
You said target institutions and corporations. Wait, what do you mean?
Fox News gets to sit there and lie about an election.
No, but what does that mean?
No.
What does it mean to target them?
In the name of democracy, we're going to let them go free.
Well, what does that mean? We have a First Amendment, bro. What are you talking about?
You can't possibly believe that democracy can survive if a company can lie about elections. And your response is,
I'm asking you,
dude,
what do you do?
No. This is a thing of I'm asking, when in reality it's like, well, I don't really agree.
No, you said target Fox News. Like,
what do you think I mean? Send the liars that you can prove have lied to jail.
For what? Lying? What are you talking about?
For aiding and abetting a conspiracy against the United States of America knowingly.
This sounds a lot like MAGA right now, to be clear.
You want to know what's funny? You want to know what's funny? Is like, this is part of the reason why we're stuck like this. Is a significant amount of Americans sit there and look at the other side that wants them to die and thinks, I love you. Meanwhile, they want to kill you. You will look at someone like Donald Trump and say, I don't know if we should lock him up. In the name of democracy, give him a chance. And then he gets in and says, no. Then he gets in and says, what's democracy? Can you eat that? I don't eat that. Donald Trump gets in and says, fuck democracy. This is the problem, is people like yourself who think we can hold hands with a side of the country that doesn't want to hold hands.
You want to get rid of, you want to abandon liberalism. You want a new kind of paradigm.
Okay, you can't honestly possibly believe that liberalism can survive if a company says, we have good reason to believe this is false. We've spoken to his private lawyers who have come to us with information that we know didn't come from the DOJ, didn't come from the FBI. Many of us are connected to this administration. We know this is really a lie, but because we're afraid of losing money as a result of lying about this, we're going to compel Americans to believe elections don't work and aren't real so that we can keep making money. And you, the ever liberalism loving guy, is going to sit there and say, in the name of democracy, whoever dies as a result of this, whoever goes to prison as a result of this, whoever suffers as a result of this, it's a-okay in the name of liberalism?
Well,
you think historians will look back on this and say, well, at least they stood up in the name of liberalism?
I'm just asking you, because it sounds like you're saying that liberalism is inadequate to deal with the threat of MAGA, right?
Liberalism is not inadequate up to the point of realizing that, hey, there will be people who say we don't like liberalism. And if your idea is we're going to let them run rampant and literally obstruct the system, conspire against the United States, conspire against the right to vote, literally spread mass, not just misinformation for the sake of it, but misinformation in accessory to not an accessory, I'm not a lawyer, but in furtherance of a criminal conspiracy.
It's not against the law to lie. You can lie. You can lie about these things.
You can lie, but if it's
it can be. I want to get some clarity. So it can be. I think, unfortunately, Rashad, a lot of the theories of criminality of the administration are going to run into probably mass pardons, but also some substantive issues in terms of the conspiracy front, which the court will almost certainly intervene to prevent. That is, I mean, the Supreme Court. I want to get clarity though on the question that we should try though, Rashad. No. I think that there can be other methods by which we can try to have accountability. Unfortunately, though, and that includes, I think, a lot of state actors stepping up. For example, trying to charge kidnapping for some of these immigration matters where people were taken from states and brought to, like, for example, Sikot. I think that there's some creative stuff that we can try to do, but there's a big problem here and a lot of structural reform that's needed because we do need punishment and we do need accountability. But I just want to get clarity on Hutch's question. When you asked, is liberalism enough? Hutch, do you mean it to stop Trump and MAGA as a structural framework or as a set of ideas enough to defeat MAGA? Or is your question more, is it impossible to defeat MAGA within a liberal framework? What is more accurate to your question?
Can liberalism survive by adhering to principles like free speech. I mean, we don't throw people in jail for lying about politics. We don't. And Rashad conjured
just
some
lying about politics, Hutch.
No, come on.
Some lies are illegal, right? You acknowledge that it's possible to lie in an illegal way.
Why
Right?
Some lies are crimes.
Soy pill. Why do you do this?
Because
Why do you
I
do
think you're strawmanning him right now. He's not
No,
saying
no. He's
this?
not. He's not strawmanning. He's not strawmanning.
Oh,
he's not?
Hang on.
No, hold on. He's not strawmanning.
He was talking to me. He said use the state to target Fox News. I said for what? He said lying. I said lying's not illegal. He said aiding and abetting a conspiracy.
Lying to the point of causing an insurrection.
You think I'm mad at them for like lying about the weather?
Why are you doing this? You are smarter than this.
Wait.
He's not. Okay, go ahead. No, Rashad, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You are straw manning me. Actually, my lawyer, Soy Pill, is actually right. That wasn't racial. But the point here is I don't. The fact that you're like, well, are you against lying? And it's like, well, yeah, in the furtherance of a criminal conspiracy. But what about the lying, though? I'm not mad about Jesse Waters saying that pancakes are better than waffles, which is a heretical lie.
But we already have mechanisms. We already have mechanisms to hold Fox News accountable for lies. I mean, they said it was the largest, but this is a civil case. There was the largest civil settlement literally ever because
you think that this stuff should just stay like civil. There should be no actual criminal consequences for knowingly aiding and abetting in a criminal conspiracy that cannot work without a national mandate.
Of course. Like Jack Smith charged people with conspiracy to deprive rights. I mean, like,
but you do understand that, like,
what the fuck happened to the subreddit? It's full of tankies and Leninists again. Who are the tankies and Leninists? What the fuck are you guys talking about?
The conspiracy of this nature can't work unless like millions believe that the election was
so you want to use the state to target Fox News, correct?
Yes, in the events, you know what's funny is like we're heading towards hell because of this kind of mindset. The Europeans understand that if you just let anything fly, you're cooked. But you guys are in this kind of mindset of like, well, everything will turn out A-okay and liberalism. And it's like liberalism reserves the right to defend itself, frankly. If you're going to sit there and let...
illiberal, though. I mean, like, if we're talking about...
Okay, so I'm being illiberal. I'm being illiberal by seeing people engage in a criminal conspiracy that is reliant upon lies.
What Fox News conspiracy criminal thing are you talking about? What are you talking about?
Serious right now.
Yeah, I don't see it. Yeah, what
so wait, hold on a minute.
What's the criminal conspiracy?
So
that's a fair question.
Wait, hold on. You don't think that Donald Trump's criminal conspiracy is not reliant? Hold on, because now
what
we're talking.
The crime is the question.
Hold on a minute. Hold on. I grant that we don't have laws on the books, but I do believe that we do need laws against this because the reality is that this kind of conspiracy, cannot work without Fox. It doesn't. You need people to think it was stolen for them to run into the Capitol and obstruct a legal proceeding that actually transitions power from one head of state to another. So when you sit there and say, it's like, well, if
let's
we
talk
get
about
back
that
power and we don't criminalize this, are we just going to recycle this?
So let's talk about that, Rashad. Let's talk about it because I agree that there's some. So the standard for criminalizing conduct with respect to the attempted theft of the election with the insurrection, all that, is incitement and conspiracy. You're right. Conspiracy against rights.
Bro, one thing I'm getting... Sorry, I have 21 emails left, and then I'll be here. One thing I'm getting is it feels like you're... I don't know how true this is. There are so many parallels to U.S. politics. It feels like your Keir Starmer guy is like our Joe Biden guy, where like everybody hates him. He has super low popularity. Like everybody just thinks he's a piece of shit, but like the government and the policies are actually doing exceptionally well. And if you ask people individually on any of the policies, or if you look at any of the actual government outcomes, like everything is actually going really, really, really well, but everybody hates him. And I don't know why. I don't know what the reason why is. You ever learn to pronounce the names? Keir Starmer? Keir Starmer?
Conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding. These are all things where statements can be relevant to those crimes. 100% about that. I don't think that Fox, however, has crossed the threshold in terms of the criminal conspiracy. If there were evidence of that, I think that they should be charged and they should be found out. There's another problem, though, in the context of actualizing this specific desire in the future, which is Trump has pardoned everyone there other than himself. And that is how are we going to get accountability for Fox on Jan 6, given everyone's immunization when it comes to federal
it's political theory and philosophical theory at that point. It's like, okay, well, like, do we have a mandate? Does Trump do enough damage to where people say his pardon is invalid. At what point does a pardon retain its validity if the person who instituted them did them to actually like aid and abet in the destruction of democracy? Like, at what point do we say a pardon really doesn't matter?
Here's what I'll give you. So here's what I give you. This is what I'll give you, Rashad. I think that people should try different test cases. I'm telling you what the chances are that they'll be successful. 0.00001. This is what I would like to see tried. I would like to see Congress implement enforcement of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, and for someone to try to get an action that would declare Trump having never held the office of presidency in his second term because he's unqualified under the Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, and maybe we can get those pardons annulled by virtue of the fact that he was never in office
Pisco's coming over. Okay.
officially with respect to his qualifications. However, the problem is this is all going to fail in court because we're going to have a situation where there's a de facto officer doctrine where the courts are going to say, no, even if we were to grant that he were not in office legitimately, the Supreme Court's going to say he acted as a de facto officer. And so
which really Supreme Court? This current one?
Confrontation. This current one. So what I'm trying to say is we need this current Supreme Court. Yeah.
Yeah.
So talk me through those problems. Go through that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm no lawyer, but from a very layman perspective and, ignorant perspective, at what point do we even listen to the Supreme Court that gave immunity? And now, of course, legally speaking, it's not like literal immunity, but think about how Trump perceives it and how the public perceives it. Think about how a court that says, well, a president that speaks to his attorney general is within the rights of the power of the president, and you can't actually investigate whether or not his conversations with his attorney general are criminal in nature. Like, at what point do you say this Supreme Court is invalid?
Wait, so if this is how you feel, Rashad, why are you not just actively agitating for a revolution, just a violent revolution right now?
Why? That's dumb.
Why?
Not right. I mean, you need a mandate. You need the public to want that. You need time to pass. Like, you can't just sit there and say, well, let's go crazy. You do have to wait, because the reality is, if Trump, passes now, God forbid, and he's replaced by someone more sane and tame, all of those things will be impossible because the public won't feel like they need to happen. But the reality is, these things in their worst form do lead up to actually what they are leading up to.
Okay, but
dictatorship.
It does sound like you're pushing to just end the current system, scrap the Constitution, start something new. What is that?
No, we can amend and change things. There's no need to
but you just said ignore the courts. That's not amending. You're just at
what point do you acknowledge the fact that a court, the highest court in the land, is compromised by an organization like the Heritage Foundation?
Right, that would be getting rid of the Constitution, right?
At some point, the emergencies would have to require you to actually realize that, hey, the Constitution, under normal circumstances, we could not do this or we could not do that, or Trump needs to be convicted of this particular thing in order for us to think he wasn't the president.
Right.
However,
every
at
single
some
criticism
point
that he has put forth is potentially institutionally manageable. This is what people are talking about: court packing, impeachments, all of these things are technically possible.
I swear to God, bro, you drive me.
You just said he wants a revolution. He didn't say that.
He's not talking about. He's not talking about institutional reform, Soy Pill. Do you understand this? He's saying just ignore the fact and then target Fox News.
You can 100% have.
Josiah said that. Josiah said that.
You do.
I want to say this to Hutch. Hutch, you realize that Josiah is flirting with the notion of non-acquiescence with respect
to the court. Him and I have.
Yes.
Yeah. Him and I have gone back.
I know, but you're going. No. But Hutch, you would not accuse Josiah of wanting a violent revolution when he talks to you.
I would ask him the same question.
Josiah's a great guy.
I would ask him the same question. You witness us go back and forth on these issues about preserving liberal norms and
yeah.
So I'm consistent.
So I'm just saying you're being a little. No, I'm supporting Soy Pill, who's my boy. And I think that he's right, that it doesn't entail judicial
why do you guys do this? He's not talking about passing legislation to expand the court.
My lawyer,
even if he wasn't, Hutch, even if he wasn't, so often you're talking about, especially when we're criticizing the left, look, this was the
where am I? Where? Oh, never mind.
Choice between fascism and not fascism. How the fuck are you not throwing every single thing at the wall and seeing what sticks to try to get it done? And Rashad here is we need to take more extreme issues. This is not going to go away just because we won the midterms. It's not going to go away because of the next election. We need a mandate of the people to poison them against the MAGA mindset, whether that's through influence, through any of these things. How can you say that's taking it too far?
Because I'll explain it to you.
People who lied us into an insurrection should face more punishment than millions of dollars that isn't going to get them. They're not going to blink. They're still there.
All of this
They could do this again.
Bro, all of this is totally incoherent. We are already doing something right now. We're already employing a strategy to just like demolish them. You're saying, let's just throw that out, like toss out the Constitution whenever we
No, I'm not.
Hang on. We're saying toss out the Constitution whenever we feel like.
We're
and
not
then
saying that.
Whenever we
you do
feel
this-
like it's so crazy. It's
You
so
just
crazy.
you just said just arbitrarily target Fox News.
Arbitrarily.
It is.
Oh my God. It's
Cite
like
the crime. What is the crime? If it's
Dude,
not
oh my God. Why are you being this way, Hutch? Why can't you just
I
understand?
am a liberal. I'm a
Why
liberal.
can't you
That's why I don't want to end liberalism.
I want you to commit.
I'm
Hutch,
a
I want you to commit.
doctor.
Hutch, I need you to commit. In 4 years, if we're losing in the general, in 6 years, if we lose in the midterms, will you say, "Oh shit, maybe we needed more of a mandate"? Will you say we're right? Can we hold you to that?
What is this?
Dude, you have to.
Wait, sorry, bro. You don't agree. Do you agree with Rashad that we should ignore the courts?
No, I actually hate soy pill. I actually hate you.
Take the pill,
love you,
Hutch.
Hutch.
No, I hate you. Don't say that. I hate you. You have a bad ass. You have a flat ass. It's not even fat and juicy.
Soy pill.
Flattest ass I've ever seen in my fucking
pill.
life.
Soy pill. We can't just ignore the courts, right? If we want
I'm
to
not saying- I
change
didn't-
the courts, there's all right, no,
Say
but
ignore the court.
you're no the most. But the thing is, you're talking about Rashad's like general outlook, perhaps. But the most like inflammatory thing that was just most recently said was something approaching, let Marshall enforce his ruling, something like that. And
Yeah.
I think that that's a quite provocative thing to say, and I think that it's fair for Hutch to be not on board with
You're
that
right.
as a liberal,
So we were
and
talking
I'm also
past
not on
each
board with
other.
that.
I was making a much more
Yeah.
centrist version of.
Well,
Rashad
isn't
Tlaib.
JD
Yeah,
Vance the
well,
same
well,
guy
Can I say,
that
Rashad, please? Can I just say, what happens when we do get the power? Then the other side doesn't listen to us now. Now, how are you going to rule?
What do you mean the other side's not going to
So
listen to us?
if we ignore
You're
the
right.
Supreme Court now and we deem it illegitimate, and then we say we're not listening to you, and
Oh,
then we
they're
take
not-
over the court
It's-
somehow.
that's-
They're
And
going
now
to be
it's
in
our
camps.
court. Why should the other side listen to
there
us?
are no
Why should the other side listen to
camps.
us?
There's no camps, okay? Stop the camps. You're looking at it from a very, 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 very compact perspective. I hate to sound like a communist, but in theory, if you read the theory, if we reach that point, I'm sorry, but like it'll be like decades, like maybe 4 or more before like we reach the point of like people saying like, well, what if we ignored the Supreme Court? More than likely, the entire nation will realize the Supreme Court's the reason why this fat bitch came back to the presidency, in all honesty. And at some point,
True. Big true twice. Criminal immunity. Axing the 14th Amendment. Oof.
if you actually want to uphold liberalism, you have to understand liberalism is not just the word of the law, it's the intention of the law, the spirit of the law. And if somebody seeks to upend that or destroy that, you don't give them carte blanche to do it indefinitely. And you want the public to be able to see the signs of when someone's trying to do that. You don't want to play a game of like, well, we represent the good side of things and hopefully one day you'll see it that way. No, you need a public that can say, hold on a minute, we wouldn't have ran into that Capitol if you had lied. Okay. We wouldn't have been able to galvanize tangible physical force to upend and disrupt a federal proceeding had you not utilized your lies to amplify this. And Fox News, by the way, I don't know if this is true, but maybe I'd have to investigate, might have even continued hinting at it even after the insurrection. So it's important to keep in mind that, like, if you love liberalism so much, you can't just wait until someone's standing above you ready to end you before you say, well, actually, maybe.
All right, well, let's play out your scenario then. Okay, so you have President Newsom, and he instructs AG Jack Smith to indict Fox News for, you say, conspiracy to I don't know what you said. And then, okay, so now you've arrested, you know, Murdochs or whatever, and they hire lawyers, and they go to a judge, and the judge goes, what the fuck is this? We have a First Amendment. This is insane. There's no crime here. What do you do?
That judge is full of shit. You can't honestly.
No, but what do you do?
Hold on a minute. Hold on a minute. That judge is removed. Are you serious?
Okay, come on.
Yeah,
no. Hold on.
Liberals. Where are my fellow liberals? Is this Lib Learn?
Let me answer. Let me answer.
All right.
It's like,
you don't want a dictatorship.
Hold on a minute. Can somebody?
Want
what did Eileen Cannon do for Trump? What did she do for? What was that favorite?
Well, you're gonna have to be more specific than
that. What was that thing?
What
What was that ruling?
There's a bunch. There's a bunch.
There was one she did where I was like,
There's
this bitch is
multiple.
crazy.
I'll
But-
tell you them real quick. So the most crazy thing she did is she took jurisdiction over in the execution of the Warren and Mar-a-Lago, which was like totally ridiculous and insane. She claimed that Jack Smith was invalidly appointed, and now most recently she's like purporting to permanently enjoin the release of the second volume of the Smith report. So that's just a small list of insane shit she did. She did insane shit.
So like it's kind of like this thing of like, again, do you want to follow the letter of the law because it's the law, or are you trying to follow the intention of it? Because if a judge is saying, I'm going to use my
law
legal...
is democracy, right?
Hold on. The law is democracy. However, we framed our laws in such a way to bring about a specific purpose, right? Like, what was the purpose of the laws? The laws was to create, I would imagine, a free and open society that respects the rule of law, transition of power, democracy,
individual rights.
so forth. Individual rights. When someone says, I'm going to use the purpose of this government and the power vested in me to help someone overturn all of those things, do you think it even matters a single smidget of when the actual tangible consequences of allowing those people to gain power actually seeps in? Imagine telling somebody actually suffering from this regime, well, we followed the rules of democracy.
That's why I asked you. That's why I asked you the question. Are you just?
You would want to in that scenario.
No. It was the bigger question. But the question when I asked you was, do you think liberalism is just not enough, and it's just we need a new system then, right?
Something a little bit different, but not radically. No.
Not radically, but hold on. Not radically, but if a judge gives you a ruling that you don't like, you imprison them?
A ruling that you don't like under specific circumstances. By the way, a ruling that you don't like. I like that wording you use. It's very dishonest.
Three more.
A ruling that you
What's
don't
better
like.
wording? Wait. Why is it dishonest? What's better wording?
A ruling in the midst of a political party trying to end democracy, and the judge who studied law, knows that they are aiding and abetting in this ruling with allowing a media company that without its misinformational spread would not be able to galvanize enough of a crowd to go into the Capitol to do this.
But why not appeal the decision?
It's like, I'm going to ignore all of the ways in which...
Why not appeal the decision? Why not appeal the decision first?
Hold on a minute. Appeal the decision. Because I recall correctly, another question was, what if the Supreme Court of the land also ruled? So it's like, at what point do you realize the system is full of people who will use their power
to dissolve
to compromise any accountability?
So and dissolve the courts, right?
Your response is, well, we'll appeal it. And I suppose that if the highest court of the land also says no, you will sleep warmly at night. Knowing you respected liberalism, and no matter what consequences may come from whatever consequences may come from these people maintaining power or coming back, you can sleep soundly at night because you defend liberalism. I
think liberalism is pretty dope.
That's like empty, nonsensical,
I think liberalism has ushered in like unprecedented individual rights.
Who's disagreeing with you here?
But you're saying that it's not.
Dude, I love liberalism more than you because when somebody threatens it, I realize that sometimes changes have to be made because we're in a different era than we were in the 1700s.
Don't you realize that you're saying I love liberalism so much that I would be willing to dissolve liberalism to protect it?
That's not even what we're talking about.
That is what you're saying.
It's not.
We are 12 minutes over, and we haven't struck Iran yet. We have not talked about Iran yet. Do we want to say something real quick and Google it? This could go on forever.
I think it's chicken shit. This is so I disagree with a lot of what Rashad said about the structural changes to liberalism as such. Spiritually, I'm with him on a lot of like the fight energy. I think that there are Democrats who do that and have that energy. But here's one area where maybe I'll get spiritual agreement from Rashad. I think it's chicken shit when we have Democratic Congress people who are like, we're not going to handicap Trump on his war with Iran. Like, why the do we have someone like Jared Meyer?
Jesus. Is Hutch just completely missing the point? No, it's a legitimate disagreement for both of them to have. Oh, Josiah's going to be far on the other side of Hutch here.
I was like 2 hours behind. I was listening to some of your stream, and obviously I listened to the conversation, the Live and Learn episode.
Read the comments. You mean the chat room?
Yesterday on my drive back. That was a really good conversation. It was intense. It was energetic. It was beautiful. And the only thing, because I don't know what conclusion you've arrived to.
You see Rashad say you should debate train Kamala. What?
Dog.
Wait, so
Yeah,
I want to press you a little bit on this. I have two questions. So like first, did you actually watch like the whole episode with Ben Shapiro? And then the second question is, how familiar with Gavin Newsom's game in California as a politician over the last 2 decades are you? Like, are you familiar with like how he's operated politically in the 21st century?
No, he's a good governor. I'm aware. His policy is great. Yeah. But it comes back to like the conversation you guys had with Jose like about Biden. It's like the policy is amazing, but if only the American people gave about policy. It's like watching a basketball game and being obsessed with like, did LeBron do a cool pose after he scored rather than did he score? Like, did he put up points? The American people are more concerned with, was the pose cool? Did he look cool? Did his jersey look nice? That's the unfortunate reality. And I didn't watch the entirety of the interview with Ben, but like that beginning part,
he pushed back a lot.
That beginning part was key for me because I'm like, dude, you have a guy on your show justifying Trump allowing ICE agents to kill people and not holding them accountable. You can't go to, like, when you bring these people on, and it was like I was telling people about Kamala going on Joe Rogan. I said, if Kamala's going to go on Joe Rogan, she needs to sit down with Destiny or somebody who's a debater who can prep her, because Joe Rogan's probably not going to sit there and have like goody two-shoe convo with her.
Okay, true. Absolutely true.
In the subsequent 2 hours of this stream. But the only thing I would say is I do think you and Rashad were slightly talking past one another, and that's just as much his fault as yours.
You're going to trigger me.
Precise on certain things. I know. I agree with you that in terms of winning elections, particularly in the short term, Democrats shouldn't really fuck with the formula. It's working. I agree with you. I think what Rashad is saying is he wants to return to an era where there was uninterrupted control of the federal government by one party, right? Because we've had periods like that where, decades or two of, the presidency in the hands of the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, or the House of Representatives. Yeah.
Dominated the House. Yeah.
And I think that's what he's talking about. Now, you may still disagree with his suggestions on the substance, but I think what he is saying is, okay, being anti-Trump and campaigning on affordability in the age of Trump is a good way in the move by move, inch by inch, short term to win elections. Mm-hmm. And it's clearly working, to your point. It's the common denominator with Cheryl and Spanberger and Mamdani, right? Yeah. But he's trying to offer what he believes is a more durable vision so that the next election won't go to the Republicans. And he does have a point there, if not in terms of his proffered solution. He does have a point where there has been, particularly since Trump, a back and forth. I mean, this is the first uninterrupted, Biden was the first uninterrupted Democratic presidency in that he didn't get a second term since Jimmy Carter, right? And the first since, in general, since President Bush.
Wait.
So I think what he's saying is having like durable, long-lasting control so that the changes to the systems can be made to prevent or reduce the likelihood of a future Trump, and for Democrats to pass a lot of progressive policies or more beneficial policies, even if you don't like the taste of progressivism.
Let me,
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. I want to respond to that.
Sure.
Sweet Hell with $20. Dem messaging should be the 3 A's: affordability, abundance, and accountability.
Ass.
You can ass, and soy pills juicy ass. You can message sternly on accountability without dipping into lock her up rhetoric. So I agree. I don't disagree with that. I agree. And then Sunbear with the primer.
Well, I was in the.
And then I think I'm caught up there. So I don't know. I don't feel like you're. I guess my frustration, sweet brother Josiah, who is my boy and who I love very dearly. My frustration is that it does sound a bit fanciful, idealistic, and kind of, quite frankly, like vapid. Like, of course it would be ideal if we could have 20 years of Democratic Party dominance in the House. It just feels like such a non-statement. And I guess my frustration is people are treating it as though this is a very straightforward thing. Well, obviously, if the Democrats only just did this, this, and this, right. And they're kind of all over the place because, they'll say stuff like, oh, well, we need to get big enough majorities and get rid of the filibuster so we can do something big like single-payer healthcare. But historically, we talked about this with Laksha on the podcast. That's just not how it works. The public don't immediately reward incumbent parties for doing good policy.
No, they often punish it.
LBJ, that was the most consequential president since FDR, and we haven't had a president as consequential as LBJ.
Obama with the ACA. You don't even have to go back as far as LBJ.
Right. But like Obama was not.
Or even Biden. You could even say Biden because he passed a lot of good policy as we talked about, but the effects were not tangibly felt. Much of it was controversial at the time. And I mean,
LBJ. I mean, it went beyond civil rights and voting rights. He established Medicare and Medicaid, and he passed the Clean Water Act and the Clean Air Act, and he did Fair Housing Act. I mean, these were really consequential, important, lasting pieces of legislation.
Agreed.
And what happened 4 years later? Nixon destroyed Humphrey. And then went on to destroy, I can't remember who his 72 opponent was, by an even bigger margin. He won almost every single state. I mean, so this idea that we can like fix everything if we just get rid of the filibuster and give everybody healthcare, that is not historically consistent. So it's not that straightforward.
Like I said, well, no. Number one, I agree with you. It's not straightforward, and I told you from the very beginning. And I do think Rashad was a bit reductive in this respect. And I've said like Cenk Uygur is kind of like my archetypal example of somebody who's like, oh, just give me 90 days and I could just snap my fingers and I'll have everything solved. Like I agree with you. Like
same
that's
vibes.
not.
It's the same.
But I certainly agree with you that he was presenting it much more straightforwardly than I think is reasonable. And so I agree with you there. But where's I going with that? You're talking about
well, let me.
Oh shit. That's just...
Wait, filibuster single payer healthcare.
Don't filibuster me. Don't filibuster
no,
me.
You. I was trying to respond to you, and I had a really good point.
You're Hassaning me right now. You're Hassaning me right now in the conversation.
No,
with
honestly,
no,
that's really why I'm here.
You
and Hassan and Hutch.
You spoke for a decent amount.
Listen, you and Hassan have so much. They both start with an H. Okay, the similarities between you two are really galling. That's the other reason I'm here. It's a stage intervention.
No, shut up. You made like 10 points. Let me talk. Okay, so like.
So you weren't done with my points.
I was not done. No. So
okay, I apologize.
Okay, so that's not the only thing that's frustrating though.
Okay.
A big source of my frustration these days is something that I'm seeing all over the place. It came up many times on the podcast when you were one of the hosts. Is this idea that the way that liberals and leftists talk about Trump, completely like the rhetoric and the framing just completely acquiesces to Trump's propaganda about himself. Like Trump's whole thing is he's trying to project like manliness and assertiveness and strength and political dominance. Like that's his whole thing. I won by the largest margins, and I did very well in Maine. You know, I almost won Maine, and I frankly think that California, you know, like that's his whole thing is he just lies about how strong he is over and over and over again. And it seems like I hear rhetoric from people like you and people like Rashad and people like everybody seems to be doing this, where they buy into that and they're like, look at Trump, he gets everything he wants. You know, he's this like really strong politician. Meanwhile, the Democrats don't have any balls and they're feckless and they have no vision. Like none of that corresponds with reality, Josiah. And it drives me insane that people accept this framing.
Yeah, I understand, but I wasn't there yesterday. I think you're being a bit reductive in my view because we could just exchange straw men, right? So I could say that you have your head up your ass because Donald Trump's the most powerful person on earth, and you never take that into consideration. And he won the presidential election twice. And if you're concerned about people being, subscribing to an inflated sense of Trump's power, that you make him sound like he's the weakest in the world when he is not. So we could exchange reductive versions of each other's.
I never. Wait a minute. Hang on.
Wait a minute. I understand. And I never said that Trump gets everything he wants and Democrats never get everything they want. So let's not do this because we can do this all day. You think I err on the side of Democrats are too weak and Trump is too strong. I think you err on this idea that Trump is weak. Not just weaker, but weak, when he is the most powerful person in the world by far, infinitely more powerful than any
conversation. That's a different conversation.
No, it doesn't. No,
that's a conversation about.
Stop it. You stop it. You're being Hassan right now. You're being Hassan right now. I'm not finished, Hassan. Okay, so listen to me. We're still stuck with Trump for the next 3 years. I agree that his polling is in the toilet. He's only passed one major legislative bill, and that was the One Big Beautiful Bill, and he's already ruled out a reconciliation package in 2026.
Keep talking. I can hear you. I'm just going to go in the other room to turn the AC down, but I can hear you. Keep talking.
No, it's fine. Yeah. So no, I totally agree with you there. But again, let's not exchange straw men here. I'm just trying to represent where I think you and Rashad were talking past each other. There has to be a way that even if you disagree with Rashad's approach or Rashad's proffered strategies, Rashad is saying that we need to try to build a durable platform which could result in long-lasting congressional majorities or
Why is this election coming up so important? Is it just because it'll give, would this be the first elected reform person and not a conversion from a Tory person? Or why is this one considered so important? Basically, green versus reform race. It's the first time reform is running properly. Say constituency, not district. The Matt Goodwin guy is the reform candidate. It's an old red state.
Lasting Democratic control of the White House. And I've been sounding the alarm on this too, because the institutional disadvantages we face are making that much more difficult. And so, again, I totally agree with you that in the short term, in the age of Trump, and I think Rashad even conceded that too, that in terms of winning elections, campaigning on being anti-Trump and pro-affordability is the way to do it. Adopt the Spanberger and Sherrill and Zoran Mamdani approach. But we do need to be thinking about what we can do in the background or in parallel to try to put Democrats in a position where
Wait, Tories and Laborers are in the dumps in the polls? Wait, is that true? Well, I see Labor polling at 28%. Am I misreading this? Is this Labrador Retriever? Or what? Looks like it's very, very, very close, no? They should be higher. This is considered a safe harbor seat, but it's under risk.
We have longer control over these institutions to make the necessary changes. And I know he said single payer healthcare and stuff like that. I would prefer, more universal healthcare in this country, but I'm not even suggesting that. I'm thinking more about anti-corruption measures and changes to the Supreme Court, shit that I actually care about.
But I already agree with you on those things, Josiah. And it does drive me insane when you say that we were talking past each other. No, we weren't. I want the same things. I want to address these structural hurdles. You've heard me say 1,000 times that I would want a policy like court reforms. You've heard me 1,000 times. I would prefer major structural changes to the Senate. I would be even open to scrapping the Senate entirely and just switching to like
unicameral,
doing like a parliament, right? Like I'm already thinking about these things. It's not that we were talking past each other. He was saying he just didn't want to own it. He was advocating for a policy, Josiah, of throwing out the Constitution. Don't you understand? He was literally saying that, but he just didn't want to own that. And so when I would press him on that, he was saying stuff like if a judge rules bad in a case against, he said like use the institution to target Fox News. Now, I'm not even completely opposed to that, right? Like if they violate some FCC regulation or if they break the law or, if
the Biden administration tabled, like the Biden FCC.
Hold on, I wasn't finished. Or if they slander a company like Dominion, you have like civil options there. But he was saying like, he was presupposing a crime and he was just saying like, you need to lock up like Fox News and throw them in jail. And then I asked him, well, what do you do if, like Newsom DOJ arrests the Murdochs and takes them to trial, and then like doesn't even like propose a crime or like they concoct a crime. He said something like conspiracy against rights or like, conspiring with Donald Trump to be a propaganda arm of like, he wasn't naming any crimes. He was just saying we need to use the state to like punish Fox News. He wasn't talking about a legal mechanism. He wasn't talking about a mechanism within the liberal framework. And then when I asked him, what do you do if you take that to the judge? And the judge says, what the fuck, there's no case here.
And he said, remove the judge.
Yeah, just remove the judge. Like, we are beyond liberalism at that point, Josiah. Did you understand? How is he talking past me in that moment? What do you think I'm not understanding, Josiah?
So I didn't mention that moment because I'm not defending that. I'm talking about the first part of the conversation where you were talking about what Democrats have been doing since 2024 to win elections in 2025 and in 2026. And he was saying, okay, yeah, sure, but also we need to be doing things or signaling in ways to build more durable congressional majorities, more long-lasting congressional majorities and control of the presidency. That's where I'm saying I think you two were talking past each other, because you kept saying, okay, well, we just need to do what we're doing now to win elections. And he was talking about something else. Okay, yes, this helps in the short term in Trump, but what about post-Trump? What can we do to return to an age of a decade-long control of the House of Representatives, or 2, 3, 4 back-to-back in the White House? That's what I'm interested in. I agree with you that, yeah, towards the end there, when he's talking about throwing out judges, like even to impeach a judge, you would need 2/3 of the Senate to do such a thing.
But he wasn't even talking about impeaching. He was just like, remove them as president. Just remove them. This is what he was saying.
There's no like mechanism to do that unless he's talking about like arresting the judges. Yeah,
that's my point.
That's not what I'm talking about. And maybe that's what you want to talk about. But I want to talk about the first part of things where I do think you were legitimately talking past each other because it was totally non-responsive. So I would like to hear from you, Hutch. What do you think Democrats should do, not just in the short term winning elections, but in terms of changes to the party or policy or party agenda, party policies? Yeah, to have a more durable, long-lasting political control over at least the two political branches.
I'm perfectly happy to get into that. And in fact, we've gotten into that 1,000 times. Like there's like, I think a number of problems that are going on with the Democratic Party right now. The number one problem that I think is happening right now is something that I know we've talked about 1,000 times. You can boil it down and really oversimplify it and be like, Kamala should have gone on Rogan. But really, when we talk about that, we're talking about a much, much bigger problem. I don't disagree with Pisco necessarily about the myopic nature of media engagement that the Democratic Party is engaged in the modern era. I just think they are so behind the curve. And I will say that I think that's getting better. Like the fact that Newsom invited you to go have a conversation with him, that is an indication to me that the Democratic Party is taking that space more seriously. And so I'm encouraged, but I need to see a lot more. Like I was telling my chat, and I'm not even kidding when I say this, Ken Martin should pick up the phone and call Gavin Newsom. He should call Mamdani and summon them to have a meeting and tell them to bring all of their team and then literally 3x, 4x, all of their salaries, give them a fat budget and tell them to just go nuts. Like we need to think like really big, really creatively. We need to lean into these spaces way, way, way more. But then below that, I mean, the reason I would put that as like the highest priority is because I do think that the social media space is becoming / maybe has become ? More important than legacy media at this point. I think more people that are like the ones that are voting, the primary electorate, even the boomers, are spending so much time looking at their phones these days. And so if you can't fix that problem, if you can't compete with the Republicans in that arena, then the rest of the reforms don't even matter because we're just going to keep losing winnable elections. And so, the second thing is like the structural things that you're talking about. There are serious structural imbalances right now that are significantly disadvantaging the Democratic Party in ways that I consider to be undemocratic. So we talked about the problems with the Senate, talked about the problems with like the Supreme Court. And we talked about the problem with like the filibuster. Like these are things that need to be addressed. And I hope that we elect enough Democrats in the Senate to get rid of the filibuster and actually start the process of getting past these hurdles, and we can keep going down on other reasons, right? But like the reason why I get frustrated when you say that we were talking past each other is that's not true. I understood what he was saying. He was saying at that point in the conversation, Josiah, that the Democratic Party should run on a platform of demagoguery. He was saying that this is like, and his whole
vilifying
thing,
the Republicans,
and his whole
accountability.
And his whole thing was this was in service of this like larger plan that you're speaking to, because we need to be able to secure 10-year majorities and 20-year majorities. Okay, that was his whole thing. Josiah, my pushback to this is that nobody can tell you a strategy right now this far in advance of like what is going to land with the electorate. There is no such thing as like a 10-year plan on messaging.
Okay, who cares? Politics. Where are my anime watchers? Okay. I feel like when you have, I don't know if you would, I'm sure there's some origination in Greek stuff here, but usually you have like a hero in like a film or anime thing. This hero usually embodies some kind of virtue, okay, or we'll say virtues, okay. They're usually against we say villain. I think usually they have some kind of vice or vices, and then generally speaking, in every single like standard hero, I think movie or anime or TV show or whatever else, I think usually when the hero is embodying these virtues in some way, I think he tends to defeat the villain who is embodying these vices in some way. Like I think if we think of like any, I like if you think of like any standard hero movie, I think more or less it should always play out. So like for Iron Man, the one guy who's adversarial to Tony just wants to kill people and murder, and he doesn't have any kind of like curiosity or problem solving. He steals Tony's work. He's just not a great guy. And ultimately, I think he loses when his suit freezes in the end because he never figured out this problem, and then he dies. Tony tries to save people and do good things and is exploring things curiously and building his little suit and all that. Like, so he's embodying these healthy, good virtues, and he tends to win, stuff like this. That's not why he died, though. I don't remember if something happened at the end that killed him besides the ice thing. I don't remember. But like every single, if you think of like anime, it should be this. The arc reactor, does it blow up? He fell in the arc reactor. Fuck, I don't remember which part made him die. Did he fall in the arc reactor? Something like that. I don't know. Sometimes you'll get a protagonist, and the protagonists themselves will have vices, and then through the like ownership of these vices or the practice of these vices, you die or lose somehow. These are called tragedies for Shakespearean plays, maybe probably for Greek plays too or whatever. Like Hamlet, I think was one of these. I'm sure we could think of others, but like if you have a protagonist and they embody some kind of vice or whatever, generally that vice you die at the end, right? I think in general, we don't usually. Oh, is it Macbeth? That's what I'm thinking. I'm not Hamlet, Macbeth. Generally speaking, even though we don't think about it, all art tries to convey something morally good or tries to embody or encourage some kind of like morally virtuous thought, behavior, whatever in the mind of the recipient. Even stuff that might seem contrary to that generally isn't, if you think about it. It's very rare that there'll be some art where somebody will just wholly embody a vice, have really good outcomes at the end, or wholly embody some virtue and have really bad outcomes at the end. That's very, very, very rare in media. You generally are always finding a way to celebrate virtues, finding a way to punish vices. This is almost always happening in media, in art, I would say more broadly. One thing that kind of annoyed me sometimes with certain ways. So there are two ways. I think there are two clever ways that you can get around, I guess, like real life problems when it comes to one faction or another. Well, like how does one human persevere over another human? Sometimes you can replace a human with a monster, so it feels good to always beat them. The monsters are usually always encompassing bad vices. So you have like your Gokus, your DBZ. I don't know if Naruto has monsters or whatever, but like when the other side is a monster, the monsters are generally always like greedy, selfish, evil, like killing things for no reason or whatever. So it's another like virtue over vice. There was one anime, I've complained about this sometimes. There was an anime called Rurouni Kenshin. I think they made a remake of it, and they made a live action thing as well. But one thing that was interesting in this show is the character. Holy fuck, why did I put that eye in there? The character Kenshin, as one of his virtues, decides to embody this virtue of I will never kill again, because he was a murderer in the Shujang, whatever Senji period. I don't know what the fuck it was called. Kyoto. I don't know. The Meiji, before the Meiji period. I should know this if I was a true anime person. No one could pronounce it. Naruto. There you go. But one of his virtues was never, ever, ever killing. Okay, so he had like a reverse blade sword. So when he hit people, it never killed them, and he was just. That was his big virtue. And one thing that kind of bothered me sometimes about the anime is like, well, what do you do when you run into an enemy and you don't kill them? They keep coming back, and then they kill you over and over and over and over again. I feel like there was always like a clever way that the plot would get rid of somebody so that he didn't have to deal with them again, and it felt a little bit unsatisfying. Like, I don't think he actually, I don't remember this. Oh my God, it's been like 30 years maybe. I don't even know if that's an exaggeration, 25 years. He doesn't actually kill Shishio, does he? Doesn't Shishio like, his body overheats because of his past injuries and then like the ship explodes or something? Am I making this up? I don't think he actually kills him. the enemy becomes good. Or that'll happen sometimes too. Shishio dies from his ailments. Maybe something like that, yeah. But they always find like a clever way. They always find like a clever way to deal with things so that he can embody this virtue of never killing, but then it always ends up with things working out in the end anyway. Oh, Trigon, I think, was like that as well. I don't think Vash tried to never kill again as well. Oh, Batman. Oh, fuck, that's a much better modern example. Batman is another great example of that. Batman will never, ever, ever kill. That's one of his virtues. Batman and Kenshin are almost interchangeable here, except Batman never was a murderer or whatever. But there's always like a clever way that Batman's enemies are taken care of, right? Either another villain will kill them, or like an ally will kill them. I think Bane dies because Catwoman rolls in on the bike. Or how did the girl who was like, Ra's al Ghul, how did she die? I don't even remember. She had no injuries. She just, was it because I think that the vehicle crashed or whatever, or the child of Ra's al Ghul or whatever, Talia? She died of cringe. She had a damage over time. She crashed. Okay, whatever. There's like a clever way where Batman's villains are always kind of like taken care of somehow, so he doesn't have to actually do it. How does the actual like Ra's al Ghul guy die? Liam Neeson, does he die in Batman Begins or whatever? He must, right? What happened? Oh, the train crashes. Oh, wait, is that when Batman says like, I'm not gonna kill you, but I don't have to save you? Was that line or whatever? Yeah, okay. So is there really, are we doing moral philosophy on the train right now? Is there a distinction between allowing harm and doing harm? Maybe, I don't know. Okay, but whatever. There's always like some kind of way out of it, right? But then there's this concept of, what do you do when there is a villain? So you have a villain, and it's like a big bad mega villain, okay? But like the villain is like so mega big bad, it can't be defeated for whatever reason in world. It seems like this villain can't be defeated by a virtuous hero. It seems like impossible. And I feel like at that point, you introduce the concept of, this is where kind of like your anti-hero comes in. So it feels like for some reason, virtuous hero is too restricted or constrained by their virtues to defeat the vicious villain. So then you have to have somebody come in who's able to break the rules. Some virtue is not embodied. Usually it's some kind of killing thing or whatever, or some investigator who doesn't play by the rules or whatever bullshit. You could argue in some ways that Batman is kind of like maybe an anti-hero type character. I'm not sure. Maybe. But so this thing pops up. A really good movie example of this, I'm dating myself so hard with these. Actually, no, I don't even think I was alive when this movie was made, but the perfect example of this really is, there's a movie called Demolition Man.
At the end of a century, ravaged by violence, a society of perfect order will arise.
I was alive. It was 93.
Criminals will be frozen and reprogrammed in cryogenic prisons.
The prisoners are ice cubes. Their criminal instincts are being reprogrammed as they sleep.
Aggression and deviant behavior will be totally eliminated.
Holy 90s!
He's a criminal the likes of which you have never seen. In a bad time, he was the worst.
I'm gonna love running this place.
But in the year 2032...
This morning, Simon Phoenix escaped from this cryo facility. We are, quite frankly, not equipped to deal with the situation.
So this Wesley Snipes character, I don't remember how. My guess is some greedy corporate guy sets him free for some greedy corporate reason, because that was every plot line. Well, it has actually been for like the past 3 decades. But he's basically released into society, and there's like a scene where the cops are trying to pull him over, And the cops are like, get down. And he's like, I'm not going to listen to you. And the cops are like, holy shit, we don't know what to do. So they have to bring out the old guy, Sylvester Stallone's character, who also knows how to, break the rules of modern society. Okay. All this to say, okay, whatever. One of the most important things to keep in mind when you're watching or consuming media, okay, is the media is going to go. This was such a good quote. I'm trying to remember who. Somebody asked a video game designer this or something like that. It was something along the lines of like, why is it that? Who was it? It was like it was some media thing. It was like, why did this villain win over this hero? Or why did this guy win this thing? And the creator answered, he was like, but because I wrote it that way. That's why. It's because it's exactly as I wanted it to go. Because I'm the author of the media. I can do whatever I want with it. Anytime you're consuming media, it could be a movie, it could be an anime, it could be the Bible, right? Whatever positive message that you want conveyed, and generally I would say you're almost always trying to convey positive messages, universally in art. The positive message is usually going to carry through. Virtues will be rewarded, vices will be punished. This is like, I would say this is as close to universal as possible. One thing I think that gets really weird is applicability to real life, because we'd like to imagine that a lot of the things that we see in art are going to, in some ways, resemble reality, and in some ways, reality will resemble art, that virtues will also be rewarded. And in general, I think this is true, in that if you act virtuously, there'll be good things for you. If you act viciously with vice, generally speaking, it's going to be worse outcomes in your life. But then sometimes you have to wonder if maybe that won't be the case. I think this is like, it's hard to know if that's the case. I don't know how they do this I guess I would have to think more in anime or movies or whatever. Usually you find a way to reintegrate like the anti-hero back into the hero. I think, I have not consumed enough media to generalize this, but I think from most media I've seen, somehow the anti-hero gets like subsumed back into the hero by the end of the medium. So if I think of like Code Geass, for instance, I think in Code Geass, Lelouch is like some guy trying to break people free of some oppressive system, but he has to become the oppressive system in order to break them free. But then he realizes to truly break them free, he has to die at the very end, right? And then he's replaced with a more virtuous hero. Maybe you could argue, maybe V for Vendetta, would I say that guy is an anti-hero? Maybe. He kills people and blows shit up and does terror attacks and stuff. He dies at the end of that movie, I think, to usher in the new period. You could argue that in Rurouni Kenshin's sacrifice as the manslayer into becoming the non-killing person he's trying to usher in a new era by becoming some kind of new, basically like a totally different person. People say Eren from Attack on Titan, but I didn't watch the last 2/3 of the last whatever bullshit seasons. Yeah, I think that. Yeah, I think that I feel like always at the end of the media, I feel like somehow the anti-hero is he either dies or he becomes the hero again, or he embodies some virtue, or something happens where he gets subsumed back into this, or he ends up dying at the end. He kind of has to, Now, again, why do anti-heroes defeat the villains? And then why do anti-heroes always somehow like either die or make their way back to heroes at the end? I feel like it happens because it's media, and because we write media that way, and because we want the media to go that way, because we want to convey positivity, because I feel like that's just an intrinsic part of the human spirit. If you're creating art, if you are a human, you're conveying an artistic message, you want to convey some kind of positivity there. Sometimes in the real world, I'm not sure how much this works out, and it gets kind of weird. Very loose understandings of, but my understanding of a lot of communist regimes, a lot of revolutionary parties and stuff, will overthrow what's oftentimes authoritarian, fascistic, horrible, corrupt administration, a villain, and they'll do it with violence and all of this. You can argue anti-hero, but it's reality and it's not fiction. They don't actually become like the heroes, but they walk this path instead of, once you've become an anti-hero, this isn't really a thing, right? In the real world, it can just be another villain. You're just a villain. You've become this thing. I think this is why it was important when Washington stepped down after being president and he didn't try to run over and over and over and over and over again, it's because, he actually made the journey from, I don't know if you would say anti-hero to hero, from president to whatever, but like, it was a revolutionary war, right? We overthrew the last government, but then we respected the rules of the new one, right? So in a way, I think that kind of happened. For a lot of the communist regimes, it seems like that didn't happen. I feel like that's why people like Che Guevara a lot. Is because that guy would do like a revolution in some place, and then he would go somewhere else and do a revolution, and go somewhere else and revolution. He wouldn't stay and become like this weird, corrupt, single-party regime. Despite, I believe he had offers, I think like from Castro and stuff, to stay and just basically become a fat, loser, commie fuck or whatever. Okay. Okay, this is my... I don't think I've said anything too controversial here. You might nibble around the edges, but I think broadly speaking, these are like pretty standard media story takes. One big issue that I feel like we're running into right now is you have like liberalism, and the Republicans are, or we could say more specifically, like MAGA is a party operating with vice. They'll lie, cheat, steal, they have no respect for rule of law. Whatever they can do to gain some advantage here, they will. And for the liberal people, right? Liberal people, they see themselves as, and they are, I would say, and with respect to the liberal system, you're embodying some kind of virtue here, right? There is no hero movie ever. You cannot have a traditional hero movie where the hero adopts vice to defeat the villain. Almost every time that will lead to the hero either losing or becoming bad. Like I feel like there are, I should be able to think of these, like iconic scenes in movies where there's a protagonist wrestling with the idea of like, I have to do something. I have to break my, I guess you could argue again to the Batman thing where the Joker's like, you're going to have to break your rule. Ha 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 ha. There was a famous movie with Hugh Jackman. It's not really a hero movie, but they lock up, and do they actually torture, or they think about torturing a crazy guy that they think abducted their child? But I don't know if he actually goes through with it or not, but it's a huge, is it called Prisoner? It's a huge, like, they do torture him? Yeah. It's like a big deal in terms of like, is this the right thing to do? Is this the wrong thing to do? I feel like in some hero movies, there will be, this is that concept, like if you stare into the abyss long enough, it stares back at you, basically, where it means it becomes you become that thing, where the hero will grapple for a bit of like, oh man, do I need to kill somebody? In Kenshin it happens when that guy is gonna kill the little baby or whatever, and then Kenshin's like, I'm gonna have to kill this guy anyway, but then through wacky plot stuff he ends up not killing him or whatever, right? But the reason why this is an important part, I think, in a lot of like hero or shonen or superhero slop movie media, the reason why a lot of this is important, why a lot of this back and forth is important, is because the hero has to win through embodying virtue, and the villain has to lose through embodying vice. Because that's just the message that we convey in art. That's how we want to convey that message in art. We want to show that if you're a bad person, you're rewarded for it, and if you're a good person, you lose for it. You don't want to ever convey that. It's a horrible thing to convey. But in real life, maybe it doesn't always work out that way. Maybe it doesn't always work out. It doesn't always work out that way. So when you look at people like Hutch, and you could say Destiny from 2024, maybe? I don't know. I've unfortunately, I think I've moved off this point at this point. But there are other players in here as well. Pisco is still a little bit in here, I think. The idea is that liberalism encompasses some set of virtues, and it has to encompass those virtues. And if you want to start encompassing what MAGA is doing, the vice, so it might be prosecuting Dominion and trying to lock them up for no reason, and fabricating criminal charges and firing judges that we don't agree with. These are all the things that Hutch was saying. Hutch is coming at this from the perspective of, I am embodying this ideology here, this hero aspect, this virtue thing, where we don't engage in this kind of vice behavior. We can't do it because once you start to engage in that behavior, again, if you just look at this from an art media point, the hero never engages in vice to defeat the enemy. This is always a path to self-destruction every single time. So I don't know how you do it. I don't know if there's an anti-hero in real life. I don't know what that ever looks like that doesn't just become corrupt themselves. But it's hard to like answer this question of what do you do when this person has a vice that is capable of defeating your virtue, and you don't have somebody authoring a story that is going to ensure that the good guy has to win at the end. It's hard to know what the answer is. It seems like people like Rashad, people like Josiah, me now, are kind of in this route where it's like, okay, well, we obviously need to anti-hero a little bit. So when we say anti-hero, what do we mean? When you talk about wanting to do things to Trump and his compatriots, when Hutch is asking, what do you charge him with? What's the crime? Hutch is operating from a virtue perspective. Hutch is saying, we have to find a way to do this the right way, guys. That's what Hutch is saying, okay? This is not wrong or bad. This is the moral perspective that he's coming from. But if you've shifted down here to the anti-hero perspective, what you thought of at this point is like, well, we just need to think of the outcome, and we can pretextualize anything we want to get there. If we've decided that Trump and all of his losers need to be charged with a crime, well, if we're going to start to embody some level of vice, which is what an anti-hero does, then getting to the charge is easy, right? I think somebody threw up the idea of like, well, what if they pardon everybody? Then it's like, okay, well, what did the Trump admin try to do? They tried to claim that AutoPen invalidated all of Biden's pardons. We could find a way to invalidate Trump's pardons. That's easy. Once you've decided that you want to effect some outcome, getting there through law or process is trivial. It's trivially easy, right? We've just seen an originalist traditional court, wholesale manufacture distinct actions that a president can take that put them beyond the reach of any criminal procedure ever, which is unbelievable. It's unfathomable, right? Or we've seen the deactivation of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment because the Supreme Court just thought it was inconvenient, right? So if you want to do something, it's trivially easy to do it. It's trivially easy to do it. You just have to make that decision. But I'm sorry. This is a long fucking explanation. But when you see people like Hutch fighting people like Crenshaw or Josiah or me now, because this is kind of where I'm at, what's happened here is that the people in the liberalism camp have split, and what they've seen is that the virtuous like hero type character here doesn't seem to be able to contend with the vicious villain here, which I think is kind of embodied in the 2024 election. Something is not working here. So it seems like we have to find a way to borrow from some vice here that the villain exhibits and then incorporate that into some kind of anti-hero behavior. And then hopefully, now when Hutch keeps saying, when you've done this, you're the same as them, you've done this, you're the same as them. The problem is that if you incorporate that, you have to find a way then to ditch it once you've gotten rid of the villain, which in media usually happens with the death of the anti-hero, or they have some radical transformation or change. But it's hard to let go of that power or let go of that vice, because vices exist for a reason. They do, at least in the short term, benefit you, right? They must. But it's hard to ditch that. All of that to say, people are like asking, like, "Oh, was Hutch right? Was the Crenshaw guy right? Or was Josiah right?" I tend to side with the other guys. I'm down here in this camp now because fuck all this shit. But like, I was here before, maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. I suck at keeping track of time, and I argued very ardently for this. But this is when you heard me say on stream over and over again, when I was like, we have to have a positive outcome. We have to think that like some amount of virtue will prevail, that the human condition is set up for this. I was speaking from this type of liberal perspective, or this type of like hero embodying virtue perspective, that if we embody the right virtues, there will always be a positive outcome in the end. But in the real world, that might not always be true. So you have to figure out how to flirt with this position in the real world without letting it completely consume you. Whew, Jesus. Another part of this was when Crenshaw was talking about how liberalism exists as a concept, and then it's protected by the system that we have now, and then we live in and exist in the system, but the system is an instrument to effect the ideas of liberalism. Once the system has been sufficiently corrupted and is no longer effecting the ideas of liberalism, then we have to work outside of the system, or we have to change the system to bring those principles back in line. Because what Crenshaw was arguing was that if you want to be a Hutch that stays within the system of liberalism that's been irredeemably somehow corrupted by MAGA, just because the system is called liberalism doesn't mean it's serving the ideals of liberalism if it's no longer capable of carrying out the ideological promises that liberalism makes. There's a lot of, it's hard to know what the correct answer is here, because generally enemies are monsters or villains that are like very clearly monsters or evil things, or we're in some kind of medium where the ending is written by an author and we know that it's always going to turn out okay at the end, but like, what if that's not necessarily the case all the time? It could also be the case that both of these roles are important and that both of these things are that work in tandem with each other. So kind of falsely, lefties like to say that this was like MLK and Malcolm X, but that wasn't a good comparison there. But maybe kind of if we think like in terms of media, somebody in chat pointed out, it would be like Batman down here versus like Dent. Or not Harvey Dent. I'm sorry. Well, Harvey Dent for a little bit, but like is it Jim Gordon up here? Because I think Gordon basically never. Oh, actually, Gordon's a really good example because Gordon has a moment where he almost. Does anybody remember? Gordon has a moment where he flirts with the Vice. This one.
Can we go someplace quiet?
I don't know if he got inspired by Batman or whatever.
Professional.
But. Oh, no, I'm sorry. This is Dent. This isn't Gordon. This was Dent flirting with Vice. But Dent, like, captures some crazy Joker dude. The only issue that you have to have is... the only thing where I would start to levy harsh criticisms against a Hutch-type character, but I don't think Hutch makes this mistake, is when you assume that you're dealing with when it's just two virtuous actors that are disagreeing with each other. Now, in media, you would never really do that. Because I don't think you have two heroes in a thing. It doesn't make any sense, right? You have to recognize that you are competing with a vicious villain here, but somehow you have to hope or think that your virtue is going to work. And there are things that Hutch says sometimes that makes me think he thinks of MAGA as being a virtuous body, because one thing that you have to consider. One thing that you have to consider for good versus evil stories is the evil is never actually restrained by anything that the good does, right? So heroes and anti-heroes might represent some constraint on each other's behaviors, or two heroes or a group of like virtuous people will restrain each other's behaviors. But the villain is very rarely restrained by anything that the hero does. I feel like there are moments in media, I should always have examples for these. I feel like there are moments in media where the hero even thinks that the villain will be constrained, and then the villain does something, and it's like, what? I can't. There's like a hostage or something happens, and the hero's like, oh well, and he's like still kind of cool, and then the villain like kills somebody, and he's like, oh my god, what? You're fucking right, like something like that. Yeah. So that would be the only issue is like, how can you defeat this person over here that is embodying vice? Don't assume that they're playing in your world. Oh, the reason why I make that don't assume that thing, and why I'm saying that the villain isn't really constrained by the actions of the hero, generally speaking, is because it's because when Hutch makes an argument like, if we do this, then they'll do this in the future, that argument is always wrong. No matter what you think of being a hero or being an anti-hero or whatever, if your MO, if the way that you're operating is you're thinking, okay, I don't want to do this because MAGA will do this in the future, you're operating from the assumption that they're only going to do things to punish actions that you've done, and you've bought into their framing as hero versus hero type behavior. But that's not true. If tomorrow the MAGA movement and the politicians thought that it would benefit them to expand the Supreme Court, it would happen. They're not going to think like, well, did they get us back or did they do something to us? Like the only constraint that exists on them now is that the lawmakers know that Trump is going to be gone in a few years. But the only thing that like really limits behavior over here is they have to ditch this vice shit and come back in line to being like real human beings and virtuous people or whatever. Yeah. Why are we looking at politics through the lenses of a story? I don't understand what the use is, and it activates my BS senses. Well, then feel free to think everything I just said was bullshit. But I think that stories map onto human experience. We tell the same story over and over again for a reason, and art resembles life to some extent, and people view themselves in the lenses of the things that art shows us, whether you agree or not. I'm pretty sure, I think this one's undeniable. We feel like we have antagonists or protagonists in our life, and we play out stories and all this bullshit. So, all right, we're done with all this shit. How is anything fixed in the long run, though? I've never seen an explanation of how you unfuck the MAGA movement. Well, because I'm down here, I would say that there has to be a broad, sweeping, retributive action against the right that makes it so that in the future, the new conservative movement that comes up out of the carcass of MAGA is existing somewhere over here. With the thought being, we can't rig our shit or lie blatantly or do this kind of unhinged shit anymore because there are going to be severe repercussions for it. So now we're going to figure out a way to play within the system. Everything is all about incentives and disincentives, I think. There must be some laws and stuff the Democrats can pass to prevent this kind of thing from happening. That's not true. When you say, I don't know my pain thing open anymore, but when you say there needs to be a law that we can pass to prevent them from acting the way that they've done, it's the same thing as asking, do you think there's a law that we could have passed to make the Joker not act like the Joker in Batman? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't really make sense to say that, right? The Joker is there to break rules or break laws. The Trump administration and the MAGA movement is here to break rules and break laws. The idea of making constraints for a thing that doesn't want to be constrained or doesn't want to play within that system doesn't make sense, which is why I think you need something that's a little bit outside of the system to correct those actions, you know?
This is serious, and the administration has to make its case to the American people.
What did you hear?
What? Saying the situation is serious and the admin needs to justify why we're going to go bomb Iran? We're just bombing Iran again, right? We're not actually invading, right? Can you give any examples of those actions? Of which actions that I think need to happen? I think every single member of this cabinet should be somehow, we need to figure out a way to arrest every single member of this cabinet. I don't know on what pretext you do it, but if you decide, if the decision has been made to do a thing, then you can pretextualize your way to anything. But I think every member of the cabinet should be arrested and jailed. It's unbelievable to me. This is one of the things that I hate. Hutch would be against you on that? Yeah, no shit. One of the things that I hated so much when Roberts wrote on the immunity decision is Roberts spends a great deal of time talking about the threat that criminal prosecution has to the actions of the president. That there might be actions that the president would take, but it's possible that the vigorous executive that we all demand and desire would be somehow constrained by threat of future prosecution. And while that is a legitimate thing to think about, Roberts does not spend a single fucking word of his entire fucked opinion talking about, well, what is the interest on the other side of maybe having a president constrained doing things that we don't want him to do, namely crimes. It's insane to me that when the context of criminal law comes up, he would only think about the good actions that might be constrained by criminal law being enforced and not the bad actions being constrained, which is what criminal law exists ideally to put a constraint on. I have no idea why the fuck Roberts didn't write anything or address that particular topic fucking at all. It's fucking crazy to me. Yeah, I don't know. Fuck that guy. I feel like every single cabinet member, am I making this up? I think every single cabinet member was asked whether or not Trump won the 2020 election, and I think only one said no or something. I don't know if any cabinet member answered that question that Trump lost. Usually they said something along the lines of Biden was president from 2020 to 2024, or Biden was declared the winner or something. They hedge it like that. They would not say, I think it was every single cabinet member except for one used some kind of answer like that. They would not say that Trump lost the 2020 election. It was insane. Insane. Absolute insanity. At what point do we start questioning whether democracy is actually working? Maybe we need to consider whether a stronger, more centralized kind of leadership is what people really respond to. Democracy feels like a joke sometimes. It seems like people want direction and authority. They just don't want to admit they're being led. Yeah, but the issue is like you have to be able to broaden out the context of what you're looking at. It's kind of like when a child starts crying and complaining that their life is like completely fucked because their parents grounded them for the weekend or whatever. And then usually, depending on the parents, this is when they'll bring out the whole starving children in Africa. You're lucky to be in a household where you have access to these things, to have parents that care about you, blah, 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 right? Where it's like, okay, well, hold on. Like, and this is what I like to bring out to people who are like, you know, Trump had to bring us back from the brink. This country was completely fucked before Trump got it. It's like, hold on. When we say democracy is failing, America is failing, our failure is like more stunning than the success of any other nation in the history of the entire planet. Like America failing was still #1 GDP in the world, despite our population being dwarfed by China and India. It's still like the leader in technology, leader in military, leader in diplomatic, you know, community with more countries on the planet than any other major power. I don't know if you consider China, Russia major powers, or whatever. Like best educational institutions on the planet, like leading in corporate business, huge internet stuff. Like the idea that like America has failed is like, wait, in what ways? Jesus Christ! Like, talk about falling upwards. Like, I don't know. That's just crazy to me. Desi, do you think creative justice / retribution should be a part of a Democratic candidate's platform, or is it just something they should push for after the election? I don't know. Somehow we have to make that. I feel like we need to do the anti-hero thing, but we have to get back to the hero part after. And I don't know what that looks like or how. I really started thinking about this a lot because I watched this. I watched this clip earlier today.
We seriously having this conversation? How many hats do you think I sold last month? How many hats? I'm like, how many hats? He said like 200. I'm like, oh, well, that's amazing, Mr. President. Anyway, went on like this. This was after.
You know, Lindsey Graham probably bought most of them.
Oh, no. That's not true. Lindsey Graham bought all the knee pads for Donald Trump.
So like this is stuff that I think is epic and based, because you're humiliating your opponent. Like these are things that are good to do to become influential, but I would consider this to be anti-hero behavior. I don't want my political system to look like this, right? I think that this is good to embrace, even not to just accept, but to embrace for the purposes of overcoming right now the villain, the MAGA. But I don't want, this can't be the rest of my American political system. It can't be like this. It can't be like this. As much as I appreciate this here, we have to be able to go back to like a normal political environment. Vice isn't self-limiting though. If Democrats push the boundaries, why wouldn't they do it again when it matters again? I don't understand what you're saying. Well, it would deter that future behavior because you know there'd be a big punishment for it, right? Why do we have to? What if this sort of rhetoric is the only way to win now? Well, the issue is that I feel like conservatives have gotten themselves into the positions that they're in because they've embraced this type of behavior over actual governance, right? So how is it that you had, you know, MAGA for 4 years and then Trump again, and Trump has basically failed to deliver on every single thing that he talked about? There's absolutely no Doge was one of the most monumental, epic fucking failures of all fucking time. The ICE deportations have been a massive fucking failure. No new wars has turned into warring against the entire fucking world. 90 deals in 90 days has turned into my own Supreme Court is trashing my tariffs, and now the tariffs just got 5 points higher. Trump's affordability is fucked. Housing prices are fucked. Every single part of Trump's plan has been fucked. But I don't think that's on accident. I think that's because the caricature of a politician, the meme bullshit, the insults and all of that are the exact things that they bought into for so long that they forgot how to elect an actual leader. I feel like the 14 years of conservative leadership in the United Kingdom, it feels like it was a little bit similar in that, you know, you push for all of these crazy policies, none of them will ever work, and then people start electing people for reasons that aren't just, I think you can govern really well, but it becomes reactionary to dumb propaganda, to stupid sloganeering, to people standing in front of retarded fucking buses, to like this type of like you're doing this type of politics that's not geared towards actually governing your country, but it's geared towards like entertainment. Everything turns into like a WWF, WCW match. And like I said, I think that some form of embracing this is good in the short term to defeat the villain or whatever. We have to get back to normal after this somehow. Holy shit.